It's 11:42 p.m. in Puerto Plata, Dominican Republic, as Birgenair 757 begins to roll down the runway. They accelerate
80 knots.
My airspeed indicator isn't working. Keep giving me the speed data until we're airborne.
Understood.
The plane lifts off and they start to climb. February 6, 1996. Gregorio Luperón International Airport, Puerto Plata, Dominican Republic. It's around 8:00 p.m. at the airport when the 189 passengers of Flight 301 receive the announcement that their flight to Frankfurt, Germany will be delayed approximately 2 hours. Their plane, a 767, is broken and cannot be repaired at the moment, so there will be an aircraft and crew change. Their new aircraft will be a 12-year-old Boeing 757-200, while the new crew is expected to arrive at the airport around 10:00 p.m. Finally, and due to the delay of one of the flight attendants, boarding begins at 11:15 p.m. The 757 has been sitting at the airport for several days, and the crew, notified at the last moment, won't have time to thoroughly inspect the aircraft. The crew of this flight, in which most of the passengers will be Germans, consists of 11 Turks and 2 Dominicans. The captain in command will be Ahmet Erdem, 61 years old with 20,500 accredited flight hours, of which about 2,000 were conducted on 757 aircraft. Alongside him, First Officer Aykut Gergin, 34 years old. His experience was much shorter, barely 3,500 flight hours, of which only 71 were on this type of aircraft. Additionally, there will be 176 passengers on board. In total, 189 people on Flight 301. Finally, at 11:40 p.m., and with over 3 hours of delay, Birgenair's Flight 301 receives clearance for takeoff. Although the final destination of the flight is Frankfurt, they will have to make 2 stops, one in Gander, Canada, and another in Berlin, Germany. At 11:42 p.m., Birgenair 757 begins to roll down the runway. They accelerate
80 knots.
My airspeed indicator isn't working. Keep giving me the speed data until we're airborne.
Alright, mine seems to be working correctly.
The plane lifts off and they start to climb. A couple of minutes after takeoff, the captain ordered to engage the central autopilot. Everything seemed to be working fine now with the autopilot and autothrottle engaged, except for the captain's airspeed indicator, which continued to give erroneous readings. But the problems had only just begun. 1 minute later, a warning message appeared on the screen indicating a problem with the aircraft's speed. The captain repeated several times that something abnormal was happening on the aircraft, while the co-pilot suggested they focus only on the indicators on his side, which seemed to be working fine. Thus, the pilots ignored the warning messages from the 757's computer. But this idea would be dashed moments later. The co-pilot's airspeed indicator started to decrease.
Captain, 200 knots and dropping. Something's wrong. It's clear that something isn't functioning properly on this aircraft.
Stay calm. When an aircraft has been sitting idle for many days, it's normal for such errors to arise. Let's continue the climb. Don't touch the power.
At that moment, they were at 5,300 feet altitude and climbing attitude. Their actual speed was 327 knots, although the indicators in the cockpit showed a much lower speed. One minute later, they began to hear the overspeed alarm. The co-pilot, very nervous, kept asking the captain what they should do. The captain, aware that something strange was happening, didn't trust the alarm and deactivated it to bring some calm to the cockpit. Despite this, the co-pilot reduced the aircraft's thrust, although shortly afterward, he increased it again. They were flying blind, unaware of their speed, and the messages were very confusing. 2 minutes later, their controls started to vibrate. The stick shaker had engaged. Just a minute ago, they received the overspeed message, and now the vibration of their controls indicated that the speed was too low and they were on the verge of stalling. Again, the co-pilot increased the power, although later he decreased it again. They truly didn't know what position to leave the throttle in. Were they going too fast or too slow? The darkness of the night didn't help. They had no external reference. At this moment, they were at 7,100 feet altitude and in a climbing position. Finally, the co-pilot decided to set the throttle to a slow speed to stop climbing.
We're not climbing. What can I do?
I reduced the power. We need to stop climbing and engage automatic altitude hold.
"21 seconds later, as if the previous communication had not occurred, the captain asked the first officer about the power setting, to which he replied that it was set to a low speed. The captain urgently requested to increase the speed. But it was too late. The aircraft was losing altitude very rapidly. They were at 3,500 feet and descending. The co-pilot moved the throttle, but with nerves, he only pushed the one for the right engine, making the situation even more complicated. At 11:47 p.m., just 5 minutes after takeoff, the ground proximity alarm started to sound. They were at 2,300 feet, and the aircraft was already uncontrollable. Just 2 seconds later, the 757 would impact the ocean, and no one on board could survive the impact. The Directorate General of Civil Aviation of the Dominican Republic government investigated the accident and determined that the probable precipitating cause of the accident was the crew's failure to recognize the activation of their control column shaker. Disregarding this indication, and therefore not executing the procedures to recover from the loss of control that was occurring. The investigation also concluded that one of the 3 pitot tubes could be blocked by wasp nests, as other aircraft had experienced this type of infestation in recent weeks. These nests could have occurred during the 25 days that the aircraft was parked at the airport without the tubes being covered. Pitot tubes are responsible for measuring airspeed and sending erroneous data to the pilot's indicators. None of the 3 tubes could be recovered, so this theory of wasp nest could not be confirmed with certainty, although it was accepted as a probable cause of the blockage. Although the accident was attributed to a crew failure in executing flight control recovery procedures, a good number of lessons were learned from the accident. The pilot's decision, against protocols, to take off despite his ASI being completely out of sync with the co-pilot's ASI, led to protocols and training being reinforced in this area after the incident. Simulator tests showed that even the most experienced pilots were confused by the simultaneous connection of overspeed indicators and the stick shaker vibration warning of stall entry, as experienced by the Birgenair Flight crew. Protocols and training were reinforced in this area after the incident. Later that same year, Flight 603 of Aeroperu, which also involved a 757, suffered a similar but even more complicated situation. The static ports were blocked by tape, causing all airspeed indicators and pressure altimeters to become inoperative, resulting in the aircraft crashing into the ocean off the coast of Peru.